This is Punk Rock and Politics, and today is May 29th, 2018, and this is episode number 65. Let's do this!
These days are strange, it's true.
I would bomb the shit out of them.
If you think that punk rock doesn't mix with politics, you're wrong.
Welcome to Punk Rock and Politics, and today we'll be talking with two lead singers from two UK-based bands, Paul from Vile Assembly and Christian from Kids on Bridges, about homelessness, social media's effect on human interaction, and the labor movement.
The rich have divided the poor to do the work, while they do absolutely fuck all. They have no division of labor.
All that and more on today's episode. So let's get to the political mosh pit. But first, here's the news of the week.
Here's what's making news.
The Office of Refugee Resettlement reported at the end of 2017 that of the 7,000 plus children placed with sponsored individuals, the agency did not know where 1,475 of them were. These are children crossing the borders, perhaps with or without their parents. And this is a huge disaster, especially with the recent developments of the Trump administration wanting to separate even more families coming to the United States from other countries without documentation. President Trump is pulling out of the peace talks with North Korea, and here's President Trump on the issue.
I have decided to terminate the planned summit in Singapore on June 12th. While many things can happen and a great opportunity lies ahead potentially, I believe that this is a tremendous setback for North Korea, and indeed a setback for the world. I've spoken to General Mattis and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and our military, which is by far the most powerful anywhere in the world, and has been greatly enhanced recently, as you all know, is ready if necessary. Likewise, I have spoken to South Korea and Japan, and they are not only ready should foolish or reckless acts be taken by North Korea, but they are willing to shoulder much of the cost of any financial burden, any of the costs associated by the United States in operations if such an unfortunate situation is forced upon us. Hopefully, positive things will be taking place with respect to the future of North Korea.
And after President Trump pulled out of the Iran deal, it reset old sanctions on the country, and it puts the US in an interesting place, seeing our allies are still following the previous deal, with the US now adding new sanctions on our own allies that are doing business with Iran. One of these questions have been answered. India's Foreign Minister Shawami Swarari said at a news conference that, I quote, India follows only UN sanctions and not unilateral sanctions by any other country, end quote. Looks like President Trump pulling out of the Iran deal has caused more problems than he could possibly foresee, but who would have thought? Stacey Abrams makes history by being the first African-American woman nominated for a major political party as governor anywhere in the United States, as she won the Democratic Party's primary for governor of Georgia. Here's a clip from Abrams' historic acceptance speech.
I'm running because I want every Georgia family to have the freedom and opportunity to thrive. You deserve nothing less, and I know Georgia can deliver a whole lot more. But here's the thing. To claim our victory, to write that next chapter and live those best lives, we have a lot of work to do. We have to reach out to those who do not believe their voices matter, who've been disappointed again and again by promises made and never kept, who live in counties crushed by poverty and neglect, in suburbs isolated from jobs and opportunity and sometimes from each other, in cities where lack of affordability makes it harder and harder to stay. And in the next 6 months, we are going to have to work together to remake our Georgia. With your help, we will register every last person we know.
Seattle's City Council approved a $275 per employee tax on big companies in the city, which is expected to raise $48 million annually to pay for homeless services. As it is being called the Amazon tax, it will affect other major companies such as Starbucks, Alaskan Airlines, Expedia, and, well, of course, Amazon. The Dodd-Frank rollbacks have been passed, which is a deregulation of the banking sector. This bill was passed in the House by a majority of Republican votes, with 33 Democrats joining the vote. The bill will roll back regulations now allowing banks to hold on to less capital than before due to less stress testing for the banks from the US government. The Dodd-Frank bill was passed after the 2008 financial collapse, which was caused from the banks not having enough money and required $700 billion of taxpayer money to, quote-unquote, save the big banks and bail them out. So this will only leave the banks in a more vulnerable situation once the economy weakens. But hey, don't worry, they can always just bail the banks out again with our tax money, right? And on this day in rock history, May 29th, 1977, the Manchester band Warsaw, which later became Joy Division, played their first show with the Buzzcocks at Electric Circus in Manchester, England. Now, that would have been a very epic show to see. And that's the news of the week! What is up, my fellow political junkies? And one of my favorite things about producing and hosting the Punk Rock and Politics podcast is meeting so many cool artists and musicians. Typically, most of the interviews are done online, so I don't always have the pleasure of meeting the artists in person. But on this episode of the podcast, I was lucky enough to meet two of my favorite lead singers, who just so happen to be based out of the UK. Recently, Kids on Bridges and Vile Assembly did a Southern California tour here in the States, and one of their shows was put on by a great local music hero, Tim Piles. Tim is the host of 91X's Loudspeaker, which is a radio program based here in San Diego, California, promoting local musicians, which has been on air forever now. So not only did I finally get to meet Tim Piles, who does amazing things for the local music community, but I only had to drive a few miles to finally meet Vile Assembly and Kids on Bridges. One of the many reasons why I like Vile Assembly and Kids on Bridges is that their music has a political and social message. Although the two bands have a different musical style, their mission is the same, and that is to promote social change through their art. But before we get to the interview with Paul from Vile Assembly and Christian from Kids on Bridges, let's check out one of their songs, which is a personal favorite of mine. Here's Body Bags by Vile Assembly.
Body bags,
they're gonna bring you down. And they don't want you to think they're gonna bring you down. And they don't want you to say they're gonna bring you down. And they don't want you to fail. They're gonna bring you down. 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 Everybody dance. Everybody dance. Everybody
Right, and that was Body Bags by Vile Assembly. And I have Paul and Christian from Vile Assembly and Kids on Bridges. They're out here in Southern California. They're out in my neck of the woods doing a little tour, and I was lucky enough to catch them out here in San Diego. What's up, guys?
Good evening. Nice to see you, Michael. Good friend. Really great to see you. I'm glad to meet you in person.
Yeah, it's really good to meet you guys in person.
Great to be here.
Yeah, it was an awesome show.
First time in San Diego.
Yeah, and it's raining, of course, which is kind of rare.
Brought the weather with us.
Yeah.
My second time in San Diego. First time was as a homeless person. Second time is to play some music live.
Wow, what a move up. Well, speaking of homeless people, you were playing out in LA and then you were down here in San Diego, and homelessness is a huge epidemic out here in Southern California, definitely. So, and I know when you were playing some songs, Paul, you kind of mentioned it and everything, and today being May Day, it's, the Labor Day and everything, it's a really big deal, but have you seen kind of like the homeless camps and everything out and about?
Well, I've seen so much homelessness on the streets, not just in Los Angeles, but I've seen it on the streets in pretty much every city that we've been visiting throughout Europe, throughout America that we've been visiting. So, yeah, the homeless situation is pretty bad. What we've got to recognize is that there were 6 million Jews that died in the Holocaust. There's more than 6 million people that have died on the streets. Why is the media not calling homelessness a Holocaust?
Wow. Yeah, it's almost kind of like they make homelessness is just, they're not human in a way.
Well, they're making homelessness a choice. They're
Yeah.
saying these people choose to be homeless. Like, that's what you choose to be. Like, for instance, when you were growing up as a kid, you said, when I'm older and I get to be able to make my own thoughts, I want to be an alcoholic and a drug addict. It just seems like that's the most ridiculous thing.
That's true.
Drug addiction and alcohol addiction are the byproducts of this system, which is just making sure that it's beating us down more and more. And the more it beats us down, the more money that we're losing. The more money that we're losing, the more richer that they're getting. For there to be 100 people homeless allows one person to become super rich.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate because a lot of the homeless people, they're vets, ex-military veterans, and they have a lot of mental, PTSD and a lot of problems that was caused because they were in these wars that are, enriching the top 1%. And then everyone talks about how they care about our troops, they care about the military, but when it comes to homelessness, they don't really want to do anything. So, yeah.
Strange, isn't it, that way? You say that these military people are homeless and they've been in wars. And then we've got to really start to question the war.
Yes.
And then we've got to question why these people are coming back from these wars so damaged. And then when they come back, they can't even afford medication.
Yes.
To fix the damage that's been caused through a war which has been created to make money. It just sounds so ludicrous.
Yeah.
When you take emotion away from these things that you see and you just look at them in a rational, reasonable way, you can see that we're getting stiffed. From the ground up to roughly about our parents are getting stiffed. Because I know that when I grew up with my parents, we were like one paycheck from living on the streets.
Yes.
And I know now everybody is one paycheck from living
Yeah.
on it. How's that not changed?
Yeah.
But let me tell you, Richard Branson, he doesn't even know what the streets are. He doesn't. If he wants to walk on the street, he has somebody carry him across the street. This is how pathetic this world is now.
Same thing with out here. You have Jeff Bezos, the head of Amazon, and he underpays his employees. He cuts corners. He pays 0% in taxes. Yet his stock shoots up over the last days because they're going to charge more for Amazon Prime, and he makes $9 billion in 2 days. It's insane.
He has one eye open on his bank account, and he has one eye closed when he has to look at the homeless people.
Yes, I love that quote.
This person is just, he's one of the most evil people in the world. And, his employees are getting brought out in body bags.
Yes, and there's Body Bags. And I was able to hear Body Bags live, and I was so stoked. It was awesome to hear you guys live and play live. And we have Christian, also from Kids on Bridges. What's up, dude?
Good evening.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah,
to be here.
It's so great that you and Paul are out here doing tours, and you're out here playing music. You came all the way from the UK. So how has the tour been? I was talking to you a minute ago, and you were telling me how you had to rent the equipment, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, it just seems easier than bringing it over on the plane.
Yeah.
It saves a lot of problems. But then we have other problems like power supply problems. But it's been great, you know what I mean? And it's great touring with Vile Assembly. We've both got different sounds, but the sentiments are the same. As Paul said there, people just want to close their eyes, brush things under the rug, and the royal family having a wedding, so they want to hide the homeless people. And you think, what the fuck's all that about? And instead of dealing with the problem, they're actually saying, yeah, we're putting it on the news, we've got to hide these people. And you're like, but that's it, they are people. Why not do something good for them instead of having a wedding?
Yeah.
Sort the homeless problem out. It wouldn't take a lot, and I know, it's not going to be cured overnight, but if everybody just did a little bit, instead of walking past people, ignoring them, and I think that Paul said in his show, these are people, show some compassion, and it might even be going just to sit down, talk to somebody, give them a little bit of confidence,
human interaction,
and again, something like homelessness, it could happen to anybody. Like you said there, you could be a doctor 1 minute, or you could, you just have a job and then you lose that job, and then your life spirals, and it's not your fault.
Yeah, because we're all.
And where do you go from there when the state doesn't support you? What hope have you got if you've not got a family to turn to? And I think families are carrying families these days. There's nothing from the state, nothing from the government, and it's a terrible state of affairs. I mean, I work in Liverpool, and you walk down past homeless people every day and you think, why is nothing getting done? It's like they're invisible. And I don't know, and maybe somebody gives them a token pound or but
here in San Diego, it's really, really bad. Here in San Diego, in LA, San Francisco.
I've seen it in Santa Monica. And it's brutal.
It is. And the problem is we have a lot of NGOs and nonprofit organizations that help, and they'll give them tents, they'll give them blankets. But here's the thing, the police will go and raid their camp, and they take their tent, throw it in the garbage. And this tent's only been used for a week or so. Someone donated, someone who's a middle class donated this tent. They bought this tent in hopes that someone would be able to use it, or a sleeping bag. And then the police go and throw it away. And it's really it's the government, like you were saying, that we don't have these social programs, and we almost don't look at these people like they're human, and it's disgusting. It's really sad. And I'm so happy that you're saying something when you're playing music. You guys are writing songs about it. But let's do one more song, and then let's keep going, because there's a lot to talk about. But here's another one. Here's one from Kids on Bridges. This is Walls from Kids on Bridges. And that was Walls by Kids on Bridges. And you were just talking about the royal family, and oh man, the royal family gets under my skin. Like, I love you guys. I love our brothers and sisters over in the UK, but the whole idea of a royal family, I just don't get it. Maybe it's the American revolutionary in me, because it's these people, they think they're above us because of their blood. Like how in Prince William, he was saying that, I read an article, he said there's too many people in the world, we need to lower the population, as he's having his third child. So go into this, please go into this.
They're oblivious. I think Paul mentioned before, about, I don't know, they're just out of touch, oblivious to what real people. I think you mentioned Richard Branson, never walked on the street. These people don't know what it's like to have problems. These people have never experienced problems, and for me, the royal family is irrelevant. And in this day and age, you can't justify the cost of keeping them in state when there's so many problems.
But the media is obsessed here too in the States. I would only imagine it's so much worse over there. But here they're a royal baby, and it's all over the news.
If the royal family weren't making money, they might think about getting rid of them then. But why it's profitable, off the back of the taxpayer, the state, then they ain't going anywhere. But it's in my opinion, it's just a pointless exercise.
I agree.
They don't bring anything to the party.
No. So I've heard, is it illegal to talk about dethroning the Queen or overthrowing the royal family in the UK? Is that illegal?
No.
It's not illegal?
No.
Okay.
But what's illegal is to talk to the Queen without her nodding to let you know that you can talk to her.
Really?
And that's illegal.
So if you just run up as a
you can't go up to the Queen and speak to the Queen. The Queen has to beckon you to speak to her.
And is that same with Prince William and all them? Or?
All the royal family.
Really? Wow. So reporters can't like paparazzi mob. Is that something that changed after Princess Diana and everything, or? Because think about that. Were those people arrested? Like, what the hell? That's really confusing to me.
The Princess Diana situation is just another camera angle on the grassy knoll.
That is a beautiful way of putting it. Yeah, wow. And you have these rich families who are basically, out there. You have the royal family out here. You have, we were saying Jeff Bezos, and then you have the Trumps who are basically living off of the people. They're exploiting workers by getting rich.
Well, I said to you last time, the fact that it's not just America, the fact that he's in charge. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's unbelievable. It's like a joke. It's got to be a joke. Yeah. In 2018, we have an English Parliament, as we've got when they all vote Brexit and then all get off when it doesn't go their way, and nobody's held accountable. And you got Donald Trump, And I just said to you in the last interview, he might be like a political sledgehammer, and the best you can hope for is bringing the whole thing down and building it back up again. But I think Paul says, it's got to be a joke, that Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is the Gary Shandling of politics.
Well,
that's doing Gary an injustice.
Any of the people who could have justified saying he was going to drain the swamp, he's a change, blah, 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 you were like, okay, let's see. But now he's surrounded himself with John Bolton and Mike Pompeo and all these hardcore neocons who are basically Bush-era politicians. So anyone who's still defending Trump is completely ignorant to the fact that he is just one and the same of George Bush and the military-industrial complex, essentially.
Well, let's start looking at the way the world is the way we are as humans in this world. And for some reason, we think we've got control over our thoughts. And we think that the things that we're thinking belong to us. Okay, which is probably the most ridiculous concept anybody could ever believe. But the majority of people believe it. Mm-hmm. And when you recognize that you don't have control over your own thoughts, what you then can recognize is you can have control over what influences the thought that you don't have control over.
Yes.
And that's where the change starts. If we can change things by getting people to realize that their thought process is not their own. but the control over what influences their thought, that's the thing that they can control. And then you can start recognizing things for what they really are. You can see Donald Trump for what he really is.
Yeah.
You can see the reason why, not that he's in power, because this guy is definitely not in power, but you can see the reason why he's in the big chair.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's in that big chair first and foremost as a profiteer. But he's also in that big chair because his shills are also profiteers too.
Yeah.
And as long as we recognize that, we then can say, well, that's the reason why he's in charge. That's the reason why. And we don't need to go into any other aspect of the reason why. It's that. And this guy is in charge to make sure he's filling his pockets. But the problem is, Michael, he's filling his pockets with your money.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
You know, and we've already recognized that we're one paycheck away from the streets, and this guy is taking that paycheck off us.
Yeah.
How can that be?
Yeah.
How can that be?
He's convinced the most vulnerable. There's a really, really good book. It's called What's the Matter with Kansas by, I believe, Thomas Frank. And it talks about why Republicans, here in America, why Republicans, conservatives vote against their best interest. And it's exactly because he tells them that the media is their enemy. The Muslims are their enemy. The Mexicans are their enemy. That's why we have to build the wall.
But isn't that the same as Putin?
Yeah.
Putin's doing this, brainwashing his people.
Yeah. Well, oh God. Yeah. See, this is the thing. This is so complicated because Putin is a piece of shit. Okay. And Russia is like a fascist place. They're horrible to gays. It's not, the regime in Russia is bad, but they're painting Jeremy Corbyn, Bernie Sanders, now Jill Stein, anyone who questions the neoliberal, warmongering ideology as being a Russian Putin bot, basically, which is fucking crazy. Have you heard a lot of this? Jeremy Corbyn he's been pushed by the Kremlin. Yeah. What do you think about that? I mean,
it's ridiculous. Why would a man that is out there and his main policy is to promote peace, ever gonna saddle up to a country ever gonna saddle up to a country that promotes killing?
Yes. And how can we be against Putin and also support Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein and Jeremy Corbyn without being called Russian bots or Russian agitators? It's like, crazy.
I mean, Bill Hicks said something years ago. Bill Hicks said, I'm all for the soldiers, but I'm against the war. Which means, why it just seems kind of crazy that we're talking about Jeremy Corbyn in the same breath as Russia.
Yes.
For me, I'm laughing at it because I think that's it's Bill Hicks comedy.
Yeah.
Bill Hicks would have said something like that and we'd have laughed because we'd have knew, Bill means this.
Yeah.
But they're saying it and they're serious.
No, they're totally serious. And they're not just serious, just like you were saying, they can control our thoughts. They can control people's thoughts through, before it was, you only had so many newspapers or TV stations to watch. You had, 3 stations to watch. Now we have social media. We have the podcasts, like this podcast you're listening to. We have all sorts of alternative media, but they're still able to control us through Cambridge Analytica and through all these mind games. It's really crazy.
Yeah, socially controlled media.
Yes. Yeah,
it's mind controlled media. It's socially controlled media.
Kidology.
Yeah,
Kidology. There's a little reference to your album.
That's what it's all about. It's mind control.
Yeah.
It's just old-fashioned mind
So
control.
how do we break out? Because we can't say, I met Paul on Twitter. And then that's how I was able to meet you, Christian, and that's how I was able to find your guys' music. And you guys came out here to San Diego. I was able to hear your band play, and it was fucking awesome. We met. So we can't say that internet and social media and technology is bad, but it's not good. It's a double-edged sword. So how do we promote this, the positive aspects of social media without being dragged into the dirt and being controlled by things like Cambridge Analytica? In your own opinion, that's tough, right?
Yeah, it's generally all control. Me and Paul were at a music conference, and the control that's going on and stopping, bands getting a foothold and people hearing it, it's phenomenal. It's just all about money. It's corporate. It's greed. The gatekeepers. I don't know. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
I don't know, Paul. What do you think?
Well, I look at the social media situation in the terms of alcohol. There's nothing wrong with alcohol. There's something wrong with drinking too much alcohol.
Wow.
So if you think about that in a social media context, there's nothing wrong with social media, but too much of that stuff is going to damage you, and it's going to damage you long term.
And it's addicting, just like alcohol.
I recognize the addiction in social media because, you know, the first thing I do is when I wake up is grab the phone.
I think we were talking about this last time.
I think that I'm fucking important. Fuck, I'm not important at all. I'll tell you what's important. What's important is that we collectively and consciously all join together. That's what's important. And if we can collectively and consciously join together, we can make change.
But if somebody puts that message on social media, somebody tries to control it because it's not a benefit to them.
That's the reason why we shouldn't be putting it on social media. What we should be doing is we should be putting it in music. Music can make change. People, it did when I was a kid. It made me want to write songs about the things that I could see on the streets. That's what music's done for me.
And that's important about coming out to these shows. And that's one thing I love about doing this podcast is it's forced me to get out of my shell, out of my bubble, and come out to shows like out here and seeing you guys play, which is amazing.
I was in the audience watching a Vile Assembly show the other day, and people's jaws dropped when Paul spoke and they sung, and it's like they'd never heard anything like this, but all they're hearing is the truth. And I think people want to hear the truth, but what surprised me is how shocked they were that somebody was saying it.
It's so easy to do on social media to just block someone or scroll by it, but if they're on the stage saying it, you can't ignore it.
They can't ignore it. But Paul will say he might not be right, but that's his opinion, and if you've got a voice, you should be able to say it.
Yes.
Please listen. If you don't get our music, switch it off. If you want to block me on social media, block me. If you want to call me whatever you want to do, call me whatever you want. Call the band whatever you want. It really does not affect me because I'm not emotionally connected to these things. I'm logically and rationally connected to these things. So somebody's abuse to me is completely irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant because I'm not abusing anybody. I'm just telling it like it is.
Yes.
And if people don't get it, it's because they've bought into some other kind of rhetoric. They bought it and they're soaked into it, and I can't do anything about that. I can only do the stuff about the stuff that I...
Well, you may plant a seed. By saying this, you may plant a seed. They might not like it, but then maybe they start thinking, and then they might approach someone else who starts saying more stuff, and then they could grow. So I don't think it's bad.
Well, me and Chris have been friends for 30 years. So we've known each other for the majority of our lives. And the message between me and him is exactly the same. It doesn't change. The only thing that changes is the sound of the music.
Well, speaking of that, let's do one more song. Speaking of, the rich getting richer and all of us getting the shaft, here's Bankers to Feed by Kids on Bridges.
Fuck the poor. Who stole the money? Who stole the cash? Who hit the reddies? Who's got the stash? Who stole the money? Who's got the stash? Who's got the reddies? The dirty filthy cash. They keep on spending, there's expenses to claim. Manipulate the rates, but still charge the same. Job, think of your pay, think bottom line, think that's okay. Money has countries on its knees. the poor? Who stole the money? Who stole the cash? Who hit the reddies? Who's got the stash? Who stole the money? Who's got the stash? Who's got the reddies? The dirty filthy cash. Where did all the money go? Where did all the money go? Where did all the money go? It's lining someone's pockets. Where did all the money go? Where did all the money go? Where did all the money go? It's lining someone's pockets. Who stole the money? Who stole the cash? Who hit the reddies? Who's got the stash? Who stole the money? Who's got the stash? Who's got the reddies? The dirty filthy cash. Who stole the money? Who stole the cash? Who hit the reddies? Who's got the stash? Who stole the money? Who's got the stash? Who's got the reddies? The dirty filthy cash.
And that was Bankers to Feed by Kids on Bridges. So I completely agree with that. We need to promote these songs. And that's why I am so happy that I was able to come out here, see you guys live, and be able to promote Vile Assembly and Kids on Bridges music, because you guys have such an awesome message. And you guys, your music is very different style-wise, you know, but your message is very the same. And that's totally what I love to hear on the Punk Rock and Politics podcast, is people who have a message in their music, because it's so important.
I mean, I think you can only make music that has a message. In my opinion, I
you haven't heard very much American music.
I don't think there's really much point if you, you know, like I think Paul said it many a times. You know, we're fortunate to have the voice and an option to say something. So why not say something worthwhile? So you know, and I'm a fan of Vile Assembly, and to watch them and what they say, you know, it inspires me. You know, and it makes me. I just can't believe other bands don't want to do that. They just want to sing about. Maybe I'm wrong. They want to sing about love and relationships, but I certainly don't. You know, because there's so much more going on in the world. You know, that stimulates me. And me and Paul were having a conversation, and the song Bankers to Feed, and Paul told me about he's found the money in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, isn't it? Yeah, that's where the money could be. Gold fucking hotels and coffees for 20 quid. I mean, what the fuck's all that about?
Oh yeah, well, because they have a lot of oil money.
Yeah, but they do. But why? What? Who in the right mind will pay £20 for a cup of coffee? And if they do, they need shooting.
Ironically, we're buying that oil.
Yeah. Yes. It's
that's where the money's going.
Yeah, it's addictive.
We're buying that. We're buying that black blood.
That black.
We're buying it, and we're buying it for a high price. So my main concern about the thing about money is, you know, we know that it's going somewhere. And we know that there's a system in place that they can put an algorithm in place to trace where all that money's gone.
Yes.
Come on. They can put an algorithm in place that goes right through the internet to find who's saying what about what.
Oh, yeah.
So surely they can put an algorithm in place to find out where that money's gone. They know where that money's gone.
Yeah.
The problem that we've got is that because the system wants us to become so disconnected from humanity, from our human instinct and our human basis. It wants us to disconnect. And the way it wants us to disconnect is by becoming alcoholics and drug addicts.
Yeah.
And there's no such thing as addiction or alcoholism. What there is a complete disconnection. When we were born connected to our mothers. And that's the thing that we were searching for from the moment that we were born. And then we were schooled in a system that disconnected us from wanting to be connected to other humans and wanted to connect us into being a worker, to get us ready for employment so that we could pay our taxes.
Well, and that's what social media does. People, right. Like I think we were talking about this last interview, is people are striving for a connection through social media, but it's a fake type of connection.
Well, then what happens is we then start to get let down by other humans.
Yeah.
And as soon as we get let down by other humans and we're still searching for connection, we will start to connect to anything. So you can then connect to drugs, and drugs won't let you down.
Yeah, because it's always there. They're always there.
Yeah, and you'll do whatever you can to get it, because that drug is connected to you. You do it the same with alcohol.
Yes.
All you've got to do is break away from the connection you've made to whatever your drug of choice is and reconnect back to humans. The world would be fixed. But unfortunately, alcohol and drugs
politicians and social media and any sort of
disconnecting
vice.
us from humans.
Yes.
And the reason why I'm still here in San Diego, thousands of miles from home, is because, Michael, you're a human. And I see you as a human. I don't see you as anything other than a human being with compassion.
Definitely. Yeah, and it was so amazing, and I am so happy that I'm able to connect with all these bands, and that's why when I heard you're playing in San Diego, my hometown, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to miss this. And of everything, it's on May Day, the Labor Day. I mean, if the universe isn't trying to tell us something, this podcast is obviously going to be aired, a few weeks from now, so it won't be May Day when you hear this. But today, when we're doing the interview, today is May Day. So before we wrap up and everything, let's talk about May Day and like the people's movement, the labor movement, and how it's been just eroded and decayed away. And what does May Day mean to you guys? And because that's really, it's like a European thing. And the people here in the States, we don't get it. No one even knows really what's going on.
Okay, well, there's a division of labor.
There we go.
The problem with a division of labor is that the rich have divided the poor to do the work. While they do absolutely fuck all. They have no division of labor. Labor Day is for the fucking poor.
Yeah.
It's not for the rich.
The
rich hate Labor Day because people get a day off and they have to fucking pay them.
Not everyone. People who work at Subway and McDonald's and these minimum wage jobs, you still have to work on Labor Day and you don't get paid. It's the higher ups who get Labor Day off here in America.
I got a friend who works for a company, and instead of being on a 0-hour contract, which means he has no rights, he's on a contract that guarantees him 4 hours work a week. So he works the guaranteed 4-hour contract that he gets, he actually works 40 hours a week because they want him to work 40 hours a week, but he's on a contract for 4 hours a week and he gets holiday pay and his entitlement on 4 hours a week, which I think is even worse than a 0-hour contract because it's trying to pretend it's something that it's not.
Well, it's just like Uber, Lyft, Airbnb. It's these contract workers, just like you're saying. It's the independent contractor is what it's called. So people, normal people are using Lyft and they're using Uber and they're using Airbnb, Postmates and Grubhub and all these things that are forcing people to be a taxi out of their own car, and they have to do, because it's cheaper, because they're not getting paid as much.
Well,
it's like
the governments love it because they say, oh, there's another person that's employed. But you're self-employed, and then you get no benefits. But they just go, that's another tick. We're bringing the employment down. But when you're ill and you're self-employed, you're driving for Uber, you're driving for Lyft, you're ill. There's no support for you. Or
if your car breaks down,
there's no.
You
support.
have to fix it yourself.
You have to fix it yourself. It's a joke.
And a lot of people, if you do have to use Uber or Lyft, you need to tip them outrageously. You need to do that because I think a lot of people, they'll take Uber, Lyft, or any of these Airbnbs and they won't tip the people, and they don't understand how this is kind of a downward spiral, a race to the bottom.
Yeah. To be fair, we get frowned on when we've been saying we've been tipping in Lyft, actually giving them cash after, we use the app.
They're not supposed to accept that.
Well, we give them it and they take it.
Good, they should.
But why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, because the company scares you so much to say if you take a cash tip, you could be fired, you could be reprimanded.
But how can you be fired if you're self-employed?
It's because you're working on the app.
So they're not
right. Exactly. That's the problem of Uber and Lyft. They're not really self-employed. They're using it.
They can't dictate them terms.
But they do. It's a double standard.
If they're not your employee, that's it, double standard.
And it shouldn't be, and that's the big problem with these things. And
they start dictating what hours you do.
Or if you don't do enough, if you don't have enough stars, you get fired. But how can they do that if you're not your employee? Isn't that an interesting concept? But I
hear the bullshit bell ringing.
Yeah, exactly. But people need the money, so they're so desperate that they're forced to do these jobs, and it's really. It pulls everyone down, and it's really unfortunate. But
not good.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so happy that Paul and Christian, you guys are.
But ultimately,
doing this.
As I think Paul mentioned before, the fact that Paul met you, and you're a human being, and we've ended up here in San Diego playing music, sharing our thoughts, our music, our ideas in a country miles away from where we are. If it works on this scale, it can work anywhere.
Yeah.
Michael, it was difficult to get here today. It really was. But I got to tell you, the reason why we came was because we wanted to meet you, brother.
Oh,
because
thank you.
I really, I admire you for the thing that you're doing. You're doing this podcast. I listen to it every time you put a new one online. I listen to it because it's important. I think it's important for people out there to listen to it as much as they can. And listen, tell your friends on these podcasts to listen to them, because this guy is doing a great job. He's out here and he's trying to pick up all the social issues, and he's trying to make sense of them. And he's trying to make sense of them not for himself, just for himself. He's trying to make sense of them for his kids. He's trying to make sense of them for his friends, for other humans. He's a compassionate human being.
And I'm trying to promote the bands too.
Yeah,
That's the other thing. I need to promote the bands, the music.
I thank you for that, Michael. But listen, you're a compassionate human being, and I'm admired. I admire you, and I'm proud to know that you're a friend.
Oh, that means so much, man. And like I said, it means so much that I was able to see you guys, because we had our schedules mixed up a little bit when you guys were coming out here. We're trying to do a show, but the universe works out. It always works out. And I was able to meet you guys on May Day of all days, and I'm just stoked about it. So thank you so much.
It's been an honor to be here and be featured on the podcast. Second what Paul said, we're privileged to have the opportunity to have an outlet to, obviously we play our music, but to speak about it, for anybody who wants to really
exactly
listen, and like I said, thousands of times I'm on the show last time, doesn't mean I'm right, but if you've got a voice and you've got something to say it.
Yeah. And it's all about dialogue too. And that's the thing, on the podcast, I have right wingers, libertarians, us socialists. I think you would be considered a socialist. I consider myself a socialist, but I love to talk to everyone. And I think, like you're saying, it's humans. Who cares what you identify politically? Who cares if we don't agree? We are all humans, and we need to understand that we're only us humans on this planet, and we got to make it work out.
I'm cool for somebody to tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I'm open to somebody to tell me I'm wrong, and if you can make sense for me, and I'll accept what you're saying, I'll take that I'm wrong. I'm open to whatever people have got to say. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out here to the show too.
Oh, of course. I wouldn't miss it for the world. It's right down the street. You guys drove a couple 1,000 miles. I drove 10 miles. So, I'll take that as a fair trade-off, okay?
and I also, I read the story about what happened to your daughter with the airline. And, I think somebody should do something about that.
Yeah.
Maybe what we should do is try to get something moving somehow online, that we can pass this around the world. Yeah. Hopefully people can join hands and try to get that fucking money back off these people. Get it back from that utopian place that they've shifted it out to, that fucking Bahama paradise that they live in.
Yeah.
Get it back to the fucking people.
Yeah, it's just disgusting how corporations, they put profit and growing their corporate, coffers over the customers, over the public safety. Same thing. It's Southwest is who did it, and then look, they had their engine blow, and they're basically saying, we're not going to change anything because everything's okay, because they put money, profit over human life, over their customers, even over their employees. Like we're saying, the money's not going to their employees.
Nope.
Yeah, so, and that's what people need to recognize. And we're all about creating dialogue and making fucking kick-ass music. So, well, thanks so much for coming out, and it was a blast to have you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much.
Definitely.
Great to see you, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
I hope so. Hey, maybe next time I'll see you, I'll be in the UK, huh? That would blow my mind. But before I let you go, it's May Day and everything, and Vile Assembly has a brand new song, which is fucking kick-ass. And let's check this one out. Here's Division of Labor by Vile Assembly.
They're rolling classes on sailing this ship.
Thanks for checking out Punk Rock and Politics. If you enjoyed the show and the information brought to you, please subscribe and share the podcast. It helps us here at Punk Rock and Politics, but more importantly, it helps the featured bands gain exposure. Also, if you know any bands or musicians who would like to join the political mosh pit and have their music featured on the Punk Rock and Politics podcast, please email us at punkrockandpolitics@gmail.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. And rock on, political junkies.
I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives.
Doing a better job of talking to each other. The left hand now knows what the right hand is doing.
Look at those hands. Are they small hands? And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it. All right.